Welcome back. South African cellist, songwriter and cultural intellectual Dr Thokozani Mhlambi is ready to mesmerize Cape Town audiences with his latest musical production, Hail to the King, a musical story at the Baxter Theatre in April. Fresh from a successful tour of the United States and Canada, he brings a new production to town, which he describes as a celebration of Africa's rich heritage and artistic excellence. Well, Dr Thokozani Mhlambi joins us now in studio ahead of the production next weekend. Dr Mhlambi, very good morning. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Good morning to you and to your listeners.
Good to have you. Good to have you on the show this morning. Let's talk about the performance. I understand it incorporates elements of storytelling, classical music and African, izibong or poetry.
Yeah, it does indeed. I wanted to play with form because obviously the things that we inherit as people who study classical music are the biggest thing we want to create is an opera or a musical or this. And I wanted to find a way of bringing some of the indigenous formats that are also performance traditions in their own and find a way of fusing them towards something that's altogether new that represents the spirit of South Africa today.
You know, I can't actually picture myself seeing and listening to African opera. I mean, how is it any different from the traditional opera that we've grown accustomed to over the years?
Well, I think all those terms have a label and they have a burden to them because then you have to kind of prove yourself against what opera is. And so whereas for me, I decided that the best thing is just to start something completely different and not call it an opera and not call it the traditional formats that people have preconceived ideas about.
Right. So it's a total departure from the opera that we know of.
Well, yeah, a non-opera.
I like that. Let's talk about the preparation and the planning that you're putting in the production for this 3-day event.
Yeah. I mean, I think initially there was the planning came from the research part because it actually involved me going to the place of Emakosin, the area of Emakosin in KwaZulu, and doing research there as part of a research team that was at University of Cape Town, and we were looking at the historical site where Umgungundlovu used to be, where this was the capital of King Dingaan. And so being able to absorb that space and understanding where things were located, understanding the kind of architectural vision that he had for the palace itself and as a capital of the state at that time, and how he wanted to guard himself against opponents, so it was on a downslope like this, so that he would be able to see people coming from afar away. The way he was, his home, his Kukwana is at the top. Ilawu is the biggest and the most magnificent thing. It included poles that go right up to the top that were all beaded, had all draped with beads, which was quite unusual for the time and very innovative for the time. And rumors have it that he saw a chair that the Europeans had and asked his people to design him a chair. That chair still exists now in a museum in Maritzburg. So putting all these pieces of research together is how then I began to create the musical work. Because then so
all those issues find expression in your music?
Absolutely.
Wow. All right, now speak to us about working with the cast, and I believe that there is a vocal ensemble.
Yes, indeed. I mean, we've done some rehearsals already here in Johannesburg, and immediately after this, I fly to Cape Town, and we continue with our rehearsals that side.
And I understand there's also a full theatrical dramatic production. How does it differ from your usual delivery?
Well, I guess it's a different pose when I'm sitting and I'm playing in a concert and I'm playing music, and we're all sitting down. Whereas in a theater, you have to kind of perform. You have to present something. It has to be alive. It has to stand up. It has to sit down. It has to have the highs and lows. And I think that's the brilliant thing about theater. But at the same time, what theater has that television doesn't have is a sense of intimacy. That you can be intimate with your audience.
True.
You can respond differently to how your audience responds in each night. And all that for me is very, very, very exciting.
And considering that you are fresh from a US and Canada tour, did they respond differently to your music? Like, how do they consume your music compared to South African audiences?
Well, I think the thing there is that you have a regular concert-going audience, and people who go to concerts, no matter what it is, they're not going there because you get smang mang, lis mang mang. Whereas here in South Africa, sometimes when you're trying to push a show, people are like, hey, who's going to be there? Is this Amapiano going to be there? Like, no, there's no Amapiano. And I can't sell it to you that way and say, no, it includes Amapiano. No, there's no Amapiano. And so in South Africa, we have that sense that consciousness of precedence, which is a trouble, but also an opportunity, because if you don't have a tradition of people who've been going to concert halls for many centuries, then it means also you can teach your audience something completely new, and they won't take it like, oh no, it's differing from what we've been taught. Yeah. Whereas in those places and in those countries where there's been a long tradition of people going to concerts or people going to operas, people have very preconceived ideas, and it's hard to shake them out of that. So I find the South African situation equally rewarding, creatively.
But do you get a sense that they embrace your brand of opera, which you've called it, christened it non-opera? Do you think they have embraced it the way that South Africans have?
I think South Africans have a knack for things with voice. You know, South African music, when you look at it, even our indigenous music, you'll find that we give very much primacy to voice, not so much instruments.
Instrument, true.
And
That's
so
true.
I think we are known all over the world. People know us as people of voice. So whether you are doing a dance show, and South Africans who do dance shows abroad, or whatever, you'll find a bit of mapantsula, you'll find the statamia, and you'll find that singing that people say is very distinctive to South Africa. Yeah.
And you're so decorated, and I see that you also have your artistic residency at the Theatre International des Arts in Paris. How was that experience for you?
It was a nice experience. The French are not an easy bunch, but
I can imagine.
But now I think I'm much better prepared, because now I'm actually studying French. So when I go there, I'll be able to throw in a few words. Whereas then when I went, I wasn't as fluent in French, and so that made me kind of feel like I have to protect myself a little bit. Yeah.
Right. So what does that residency entail?
Well, it entailed me creating some new work. It entailed me also interacting with other local cellists around Paris, and getting to interact and see what kind of crossover collaborations we could do. Yes.
And you also had your music used as a soundtrack for an exhibition at the museum in New York, I understand, Modern Art in New York. Tell us more about that.
Yes, I was quite touched by that, because someone picked up, one visual artist picked up my recording of Liza Lisitingalako. This is the great anthem by Dio Soka. Yes. And so, and part of my excavation and research has been trying to resurrect these old African composers who've had this influence on us. And so someone picked up my rendition of Liza Lisitingalako, and they decided to use it for the exhibition catalogue at the gallery at the Museum of Modern Art in New York.
Wow.
And so that made me feel like I'm also walking in the shadow of great giants.
Yes, of course.
That I'm not only just self-made, but that I have this history of all these people who were composing songs, whether it's Enoch Sondonga or Knox Bokwe, and they didn't see the fulfillment of their vision for the sake of my generation, so that we could have it come to pass.
Well done, man. This is absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Great stuff. Musician, songwriter and cultural intellectual Dr Thokozani Mhlambi returns to Cape Town next month with his latest musical production, Hail to the King, a musical story.